is our Ask Me Anything with Theresa, where we're going to learn about real careers that you probably never knew was a career before, right? And then we're going to do our tutorial with Elizabeth, which that blank Elizabeth is supposed to say Elizabeth. So that's pretty much our objectives. We're going to go ahead and get started. So Theresa, would you like to introduce yourself to our class? And then you may notice there's a chat on Zoom. Because we, are basically in the AIM mindset still, we like to use the chat frequently. So we're probably going to type our questions in the chat to you, if that's okay. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Theresa Tenike, and I'm a field application scientist in genomics automation at Agilent Technologies. So I travel around to different labs and teach them how to use our robotic instruments to help them with their biology workflows.
Okay, and so I gave them your little blurb paragraph to read last week and had them come up with some questions. So if you guys want to, you can either speak or you could type in the chat, right? Whichever feels more comfortable to you. And go ahead and start asking Theresa some questions about her career and sort of how she got there.
How long of schooling did you have to go through to get?
So I have a master's in biology in addition to a bachelor's in biochemistry. So in total, it was about 6 years of schooling. That being said, I don't know how necessary my master's is. It definitely helped get the position, but if I had the same skill set without having a master's, I probably still could have gotten the job.
Wow.
Yeah, so
sound like a long time to you, Logan?
Yeah.
It does. The good thing is I didn't realize how long it was until you asked. So you could spend 6 years in school after high school and it doesn't feel that long. It goes by really quickly and it could be a lot of fun. So
what college did you go to?
I went to New York University with Jamie, actually, so that's how we know each other. Yeah. And after I graduated college, I started working in one of the biology labs at NYU, and then I started working in a different lab there, which is called the Genomics Core, where we have all the next generation sequencers that are used in sequencing DNA. And as part of that, we had some of these robots from the company that I work for now. So I got some experience running the actual robots from the customer's perspective and met some of the employees there. So then when they were looking to hire someone new, they actually approached me and said, hey, we see that you're good at this as a customer. Would you be interested in coming and working for the company? So, I got my prior experience from that job that I was in, and in that position, I did a lot of things from sequencing the DNA to running cells on different cell sorters and stuff. But the thing that I really took to was the robots. That's what I had fun with, and I think that sort of enthusiasm and experience showed to the other people at the company. How much did you pay to be? So I think that answers Elizabeth's question. Let me know if there's any more desire for that. So Giovanna asks, how much did you pay to be in that major? So
a lot.
I would say a lot. I got about a 50% off, basically a scholarship from NYU, which was primarily need-based. And they just said, okay, well, you have a single mom, doesn't make a lot of money, we'll let you in for half the price.
Still a lot.
Which is still a lot. It was about $100,000 in student loans for that for my undergrad. And then I got the master's for free because I worked at the university full time while I got my master's. So I didn't have to pay tuition then. So I definitely recommend that, because getting a free master's degree is awesome. So definitely consider working at a university. It's also, you get great benefits as far as time off and health insurance and everything. So, consider that for sure. And yeah, don't let the thought of cost hold you back from applying to colleges, because it really is. It's the bigger schools that seem to be more expensive, but they're the ones who have money to give to you for a scholarship. So I would say, Harvard, other Ivy Leagues and everything, like, try it, because they're the ones with the best financial aid packages. So don't let that hold you back. I decided this is the career that I wanted to do when they offered me the job. I never had any thought that this was even a job that existed. And, certainly when I was in high school, I wasn't thinking about genomics automation. That's not something that is even in my vocabulary at all. But I just sort of went with the flow of the opportunities that I stumbled onto and were offered, and pursued my interests as they developed over time. And really, until 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't know about this field at all. And then, when I found out about it, it seemed to be a good combination of still working in biology, but also with a programming aspect, and, being in a lab, but not necessarily staring at a pipette the whole time. So it's kind of cool. Do you listen to music, and what is your favorite genre? I do listen to music, not as much as Jamie, and my favorite genre will always be punk rock. So.
I like that. Nice personal question.
Yeah.
Raiden is into coding. He codes his own video game.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
You could do coding for STEM stuff too, for biology. Doesn't have to be video games.
Yeah, or you can make STEM video games.
Oh, true.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's one, I saw it was called like Fold It, I think, where it's a protein folding game where, users help fold proteins, and I forget the exact nature of it, but that helps people helps the scientists figure out the natural structure of certain proteins from the lowest energy formations or something. So yeah, there's a lot you could do. Do I have time to relax? Yeah, so my job, I either travel a lot or I work remotely. So I live in New York City. There's no Agilent office out here. So when I'm not traveling for work, I am at home. So if you can see, sorry, I'm plugged in. Right now I'm in my apartment, just like chilling. I'm wearing just like leggings and hanging out, drinking water, cup of tea, whatever. So all the hecticness of the travel and getting home at 2 a.m. and trying to park the car and stuff balances out with days that I could just hang out at home. I still get work done, but I can relax, and yeah, I find the time. It's okay.
Well, and
no kids yet, so that helps.
We relate to you, Theresa, because we're actually all of us except me. I'm at the school right now. I'm actually in a technology cave right now. I took Scott's desk over. But all of my students right now are at home, right? And they're working from home. Some of them are pros at it. Some of them are still learning how to work from home.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to work from home sometimes, like you don't shower for a while, don't brush your teeth. It's hard to be productive like that sometimes, but it's got its benefits, definitely. No pets, I've got a lot of plants, and that's the best I could do right now. Thankfully, I live with my fiance, so he could take care of the plants and the pets, future pets that we'll maybe have. If I was stranded on an island, I would bring, maybe like a shovel and some seeds to plant some more food, and some like really long book that I could read 1,000 times and still get more out of, like, you know, Dostoevsky or Thomas Pynchon or something, something really dense. Are there any other careers that interest me? You know, it sounds a little unambitious, but not really. I like where I'm at right now and very satisfied with my current position, so I'm not looking into any other careers currently. Yeah, so I'm very happy with where I am now, and if anything, you know, I know one day all the travel is going to be difficult, so if I could do a similar thing as far as writing the protocols for the robot, but just do it remotely and then send them to people and just be a little bit more fully remote rather than traveling all the time, I think that would be good.
Maybe we'll take 2 more questions.
I live in New York City, in Brooklyn, the best borough.
That's true. And who's going to be the last question, guys? There's so much anticipation right now. Are you married? Well, she kind of said that already. She said fiance. Let's get a question that she hasn't answered. Oh, you weren't there. Okay, sorry. She's about to be married.
Next June. So you're all invited. Just kidding. Yeah, so I think the gist of my story is definitely, you know, go to college, try to get to a good school, because trust me, they have the money for the scholarship, so go for it. And, you know, have some fun, but also pay attention, work hard, and yeah, just don't be so narrow-sighted that you can't see new opportunities that you haven't expected as they arise, and just sort of, you know, go after it, find what you're interested in and what you're good at, and keep doing that and get some more experience, and hopefully you could get a job from it and pay off the rest of the student loans that the scholarship didn't cover.
Yep, very true. All right, any more career or college questions before we let Theresa get back to her relaxing and working from home? Okay, I wish this was like iPhones where I could see if someone was typing in the chat, you know, so I could be like, oh, someone's trying to write something. Okay, how long did it take you, or how long is it going to take you to pay off your college loans? Yeah.
So honestly, I would have it paid off next June, but because I'm now diverting all the massive amounts of money that I get from this new job to the wedding, saving for the wedding, rather than to my student loans, it's going to take me maybe 3 more years instead of that. So it's not bad. It's doable. And I'm 27 now, so by the time I'm 30, even with saving for a wedding and stuff, I should have them paid off.
That was a good question, Giovanni.
It is a good question. Yeah, it's things that people don't always talk about all the time, but yeah, it's important.
When they're signing that loan paperwork.
Yeah. And, you know, college was worth it. you know, it's fun. You're going to meet cool people and learn a lot. So as long as you know, you go into it to actually learn things. I remember having some people who just like didn't go to class or would show up to class and fall asleep or something. And at that point, you're paying a lot of money for it. Don't go if you're just going to dick around, you know, like go and actually learn something. You know, it's kind of cool to learn those things. So
it's true. All right, well, thank you so much, Theresa. You're paying a lot more money to sleep on fancier desks.
not even.
Yeah, some of those desks are gross. You wouldn't want to sleep on them.
Yeah. No.
But thank you so much, Theresa, for coming to our class and sharing about your career and answering our questions about your life and your career and your path. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. It was very nice meeting you guys, and I hope you have a good rest of your class and, you know, enjoy the rest of your day and school year and all that jazz.
All right.
All right. Adios.
Yeah, you have to click leave. Okay, there you go. I was like, you have to click leave meeting. Okay, guys, so that was awesome. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. Because I want to have a lot more of these, because I think it's interesting to hear about people's careers, right? Because you don't always know about some of these careers that people have. And we know about our standard careers, right? Lawyer, doctor, teacher, postman, whatever. But we don't really think about these sort of niche careers that you could end up going into from studying science, studying math, even humanities careers as well. I'm hoping too that I'll be able to get my sister to come because she is a visual merchandiser for Pottery Barn. So she actually does all the displays and the setups. And so she has a degree in that, right? So that might be interesting too, to hear more about like the creative arts kind of stuff. So if you guys have suggestions for careers that you'd like to hear about, or maybe even like topics like, oh, I want to know more about careers that you could use math in, or I want to know more about careers you could use social studies in, or something like that, right? Let me know, because I have a huge base of friends and family that I will willingly volunteer. Oh, whoa, okay, professional athlete. Yeah, that one's hard, Giovanni. I don't know if I know any professional athletes, but I will try to find one for you. Business history, nursing. Ooh, nursing. Okay, I do know a nurse.
I know nurses.
Yeah, and she has a family too, so that would be cool to hear from someone who has like kids, right, and how they're balancing that career with their kids, because that's something to think about too. Oh, we also have a human resources person or a social media advertising producer. So a bunch of different stuff that I know whenever I started applying for jobs, sometimes you read about the description and you're like, I don't even know what that is, right? So it's kind of nice to know about that stuff before. Ooh, nanotechnology. Well, you guys are giving me hard stuff. I will find people. So we're now going to go into our tutorial mode, where Elizabeth is going to be walking us through a tutorial, and we're very appreciative of the fact that she's gonna lead us through this, right? You guys can imagine that it's very stressful to lead this process. She picked a social studies, is that correct, Elizabeth? A social studies question, right? So it seems like everybody could have something to put in here, right? Even if you're not in the same social studies class as her. And I did send out that TRF yesterday so that you could take a look at it in advance. I'm going to post it in the chat. I see a lot of people already have it open, which is awesome. So I'm going to post it in the chat just in case you haven't seen it yet, right? Which is fine. You could still look at it right now. Okay, so Amanda says, where do we take notes? So you can take notes on a Google Doc if you want. You could start a tutorial Google Doc and you could take your notes in that same Google Doc every single week, right? That way you don't have a million Google Docs called tutorial, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I would recommend, is that you start a Google Doc and call it tutorial notes. And I would put the date and who's presenting. Do you have to keep them Well, I'd like for you to turn them in as part of the reflection process. So if you want to turn them in and then dispose of them, that's up to you. But I think if you have one document, you could also just erase last week's and put this week's in, which would be fine too. Just make sure that I've graded it first, which I've graded everything. My grade book is empty, so they're all graded right now, which was a big celebration for me. So yeah, I would recommend starting that document. Call it tutorial notes. Today's date is November 1st, right? And Elizabeth is going to be presenting for us. So Elizabeth, I'm going to unpin my video. I wanted it to just, be on me. And you're going to start us off by walking us through your TRF.
You want me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, can we see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my question for the tutorial is, do belief systems have an influence on social hierarchy? I had this question from my world history class on our virtual session slides. We did a quick write on it, but I was a little confused about it and what I should have written. So I have the definition of a belief system and a social hierarchy. And a belief system is a set of principles or tenets which together form the basis of a religion, philosophy, or moral code. And a social hierarchy is how individuals and groups are arranged on like a social scale. And then I know that the leaders in early civilizations would pick a main religion to convert to, and that the emperors or kings of the civilizations would try and either force their religion on the kingdom, or they would be a major influence for the people to follow that religion. And then I did some critical thinking about it, like how are cultures affected by religion, how are different people's religions affect cultural diffusion, and how do people interact based on their religious beliefs. And then this is a social hierarchy chart from our slide.
Okay. So can I start off by asking you, so we're really specifically looking at here then early civilizations, right, and their belief systems and how that influenced social hierarchy. So we should really only be focusing on this hierarchy that you have here with the slaves, farmers, craftsmen, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so everybody else, let's see some questions popping into the chat, some ideas, maybe some, remember if you have an idea, you could probably phrase it as a question so that Elizabeth could be thinking about that idea. So we're trying to answer this question of do belief systems influence social hierarchy? So Giovanna asks, is this only for Egypt? Is there like any other place? I was thinking maybe Aztecs or Mayans. Well, did they have a similar hierarchy to Egypt?
All of them generally had a similar scale of like the king and the higher person, and then their like the slaves and the farmers would all be at the lower. So I think it like the viziers and the nobles would kind of get mixed differently. I just chose the Egypt hierarchy because I was the only one there for representation. But it kind of applied to all of the earlier civilizations, so like Egypt, and I think the Aztecs were it was the Mayans, I think, were also there, or the Indus River Valley.
And so then I want to ask you, what was the belief system in Egypt? Yeah, exactly. Paige has the same question as me. What different belief systems are we talking about? Were there many, or did they have one?
The one that we talked about, I think mainly for the Egyptians, was that they believed in I think it was polytheistic, so they believed in multiple gods that all represented something. Like there was Ra, the sun god, and that was their main god they believed in, and that the pharaohs were descendants of Ra, the sun god, which is why they were made pharaohs, because they were they had this divine right to rule because they were descendants of their believed gods.
So I think you kind of just answered part of the question right there, right? That if the pharaohs are descendants of the god, right, well, that's clearly impacting that social hierarchy. because, you know, how else would they get placed on the top if they weren't godlike? You can't just be born and say, well, I want to be a pharaoh, right? Or were any pharaohs like that they moved up the hierarchy?
We didn't go much into the specific pharaohs. We just kind of talked about them overall as like just as a ruling term. We didn't really talk about any like specific pharaohs, but I'm sure there probably were some that tried to just do it that way.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like other belief systems that you might have known about in the world might be like, just kill everyone until I'm on the top. Right? That's a belief system in a way. So Colton, I think we were thinking the same thing there. Colton said, were rulers like the pharaohs themselves considered gods? Yeah, and they were. Giovanna says, I think you were born to be a pharaoh, like a descendant of the gods. Yep. And then Paige says, well, what ways do they affect social hierarchy? Are we talking about the gods here, Paige, or the beliefs? Which ways do different beliefs affect the social hierarchy? Okay.
So if like the pharaoh wanted the rest of the people to believe in all of their different gods, then I guess they would, some of them I know forced it, some of them didn't, some of them just were like leaders of that religion. They would just like, the people generally would follow what the leader would do. So they would affect how people thought about religion, I think. Okay.
And what about slaves? Were slaves allowed to have moral and religious beliefs?
I don't know. I'm sure they, I don't know, actually.
Yeah, that's a hard one, right? Because if you think about slavery in America, it was like, they didn't even want slaves to know how to read and write, right? Because then they could have their own ideas. So I wonder if it was similar here. Oh, Giovanna says, yes, they did.
Yeah, because I think that the scribes were some of the only people that were allowed to know how to read and write, because that was their purpose. And I think you're right in saying that like the slaves weren't allowed to, because then they would be able to have their own ideas and stuff like that.
And then they would say, well, why am I a slave? Right? Okay, so it seems like we've come to one kind of conclusion here, that the pharaoh is related or descendants of gods. They're sort of doing a top-down structure, right? Maybe forcing other people to believe. Giovanna says, also for the slaves, some people changed the wording or added words to the Bible to make them think that they were supposed to be a slave and not betray their master. Oh, that's interesting. So maybe they're actually building in power into the religion, that they are better than the slave. Paige just keeps going right back to the question. Why would different belief systems of, well, I don't know, Paige, can you give us a follow-up question to that? And while we're thinking about follow-up questions to that, I want to point out too that Elizabeth's TRF has a really great example of using a diagram, right? So in her general processes and steps, I know sometimes you guys, when you're not doing a math TRF, you're doing science or social studies or ELA or health, right? You're like, I don't know what to put here. There's no steps. Well, you could put a picture like this that really just kind of shows us what a hierarchy is, right? You could make a T-chart. You could have a word web. You could have any kind of picture there that might represent something that would help us answer the question. Okay. Colton says, if hierarchies are not affected by belief systems, do you think that nobles and priests would still be near the top of the hierarchy?
I would say, yeah, probably, because they're probably higher above slaves, probably higher above farmers, higher above just noble people, just ordinary like workers and stuff. And they're probably above soldiers. So they probably would be somewhere between the highest class and then the middle of the class.
Well, and Colton, I think your question is interesting because you're basically doing the opposite here. You're saying, well, let's assume that maybe hierarchies aren't affected by belief systems, right? Would the hierarchy still be the same? Let's say they didn't believe in any gods and they didn't have any beliefs. Could you still have a hierarchy? Silence. This is why I don't teach social studies, guys.
That's why I'm asking the question.
So if let's say that in Egypt they didn't have any beliefs, they didn't believe in gods, they didn't have like a biblical text or anything belief oriented, yet could they still have a hierarchy where somebody says, well, I'm the pharaoh? Is it possible to still have a hierarchy without social beliefs?
I would think so, because I think someone's always going to want to have the power to rule over others, even if they don't believe. And I think without like a ruler or someone to help make decisions, that probably like civilization itself probably wouldn't have formed the way it did.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to open this up to other people in the class too. What do you guys think about this concept of hierarchies? Like, once you're born into the hierarchy, is it easy to move around? Right? Can you as a farmer become a craftsman? Independent of beliefs, is it easy to move around in those? Amanda says no, I don't think so. Yeah, I would agree. Right? So possibly you could use religious beliefs to set up a hierarchy, but then you don't really have to continue having those beliefs to keep having the hierarchy. Paige says, what's the hierarchy? It's actually this triangle pyramid, really just showing who's on top, right? So like in America, if we were looking at like government, the president might be on the top, but not really, because they're kind of equal to the Congress, but we'll pretend they're on top, right? And then it might come down to like lower class, middle class, working class, etc. Yeah, the triangle is a social hierarchy, exactly. Yeah, Destiny says especially if you're a slave. Yeah, if you're a slave, are you ever, no matter what you believe, are you ever getting out of that?
Does your religion justify slavery? Does it say you can do this? Because if it doesn't, you aren't going to have it.
That's true, right? And then the other thing is, how do we keep people being slaves? Do we tell them that that is God's plan for them, right? Oh, thank you, Colton, for providing a really great definition of hierarchy for us. A system or organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other according to status or authority, right? So it could be social status. It could be like brute power, like I have all the swords, so I'm in charge. It could be a lot of different ways. Yeah, that might help you, Paige, kind of grasp. Yeah. So then, do we have any other questions we think maybe we could ask Elizabeth? Could I ask Elizabeth, what did you put in your quick write?
So for the quick write, I picked just one religion to focus on. Mm-hmm. So I picked the Egyptian one because that was the one that had the scale that I could reference to. And I wrote about how, I believe it was about how the pharaohs would influence the people to pick a religion, either by force or by just as a role model almost. And that affected how the people would interact, because there were other religions and they wouldn't interact in the same way people would, and they wouldn't get along, or they would get along based on what other people thought. So basically, because the pharaoh picked a religion which helped other people pick a religion, it affected how people interacted with each other as in a city.
Okay, but did it actually affect the social hierarchy?
Well, yeah, because the pharaohs believed that because they were descendants of the gods, that they were by default at the highest of the high on their social scale. So they basically, because their religious beliefs, they were the highest.
Okay. Any other questions that we could think of that might help give us some more depth to this answer? Or maybe, is there anything you guys think maybe Elizabeth should research further that might help her? Paige says, I don't even know the answer to this question. Well, I mean, it's okay. But also what we know about questions, right? This is like a level 3 question here, right? There's probably not one correct answer. which is why I think, Elizabeth, this was hard for you, right? Because you have to sort of pick an answer and then justify it. And there might be other people who have a different opinion, but they might also still be right. So Elizabeth, do you feel like you have a greater understanding of this, or do you want us to keep? Okay.
I think I get it a lot better now. Everybody's thoughts and questions. It's pushed me to think about things I never thought about before the question.
Yeah. And could we maybe go on to this question here too? Does different people's religion affect cultural diffusion? Could you kind of explain what you mean by that?
So cultural diffusion was like when a religion started in a specific, like almost like for a country, like an example, like if Buddhism started in India, how it would spread across other countries, like how it would have spread. So some of it was like people interacting with people. Some of it was cultures interacting with cultures. It was just, yeah, that was what cultural diffusion is.
Okay, so then the answer to the question you have there is yes, right? That
Yes.
religion does affect the cultural diffusion.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, any other questions or thoughts on this, guys? Okay. And just in case people are typing and I can't see the typing, well, let's have a 1 in the chat if you enjoyed the AMA. And let's also have let's have everybody write their favorite candy in the chat. And then we'll consider that a conclusion. So a 1 in the chat if you liked the AMA, a 2 if you were like, which is fine. I won't be offended if you don't. I mean, it doesn't have to be for everybody. And our favorite candy, we got Sour Patch Kids, we got Fun Dip, Dots. Dang, you guys like weird candies. Reese's, okay, that's my kind of candy. Thank you, Paige. Mike and Ike's, Skittles, Almond Joys, Dippin' Dots, oh my. Reese's and Kit Kats. Okay, that's ice cream. Well, it kind of counts as a candy, right? It's like small and candy-like. Okay, so we all seem to like different candies. That couldn't have possibly imagined that. Hopefully you guys got to eat that stuff yesterday. Elizabeth, I'm gonna end your screen share here, I think. Yes, okay. So guys, the last thing I wanted to do really quick before we end the meeting is I wanted to talk about this debate that's gonna be coming up, right? Because I know a lot of people have questions about it. So there's also gonna be a reflection on this whole process. So we'll quickly look at these reflection questions, and then we're gonna talk debate, and then we will go. So the tutorial reflection questions are: who presented in this tutorial? That one's pretty easy, Elizabeth. What are 2 things that you have a greater understanding from doing this tutorial, right? That could be maybe you learned what a hierarchy was, maybe you thought about religious beliefs, maybe you reviewed what the Egyptians believed, whatever. What worked really well? What do you think we could change? That's gonna be the question every time. Right, and then the final question here is about the AMA. Would you like to do more of those, right? Did you learn anything from that? And, you know, sort of reflecting on that process just so I could get feedback on improving the class. So Paige says, do you want us, and you want us to submit our notes? Yes, right? If you took notes during the tutorial, please submit them, right? Again, they don't have to be crazy. You could have written down 3 things, that's fine, right? Just to keep you engaged and paying attention. Elizabeth, you do not have to submit anything for the notes. That's gonna be the reward for people who present. You don't have to turn in notes. You just have to present. So those questions are gonna be in Canvas, right? So you can do those after the session ends or tomorrow or whenever you'd like, because you can now answer them. Otherwise, we're looking at this debate, which is gonna happen on November 7th, which is soon. It's in a week, right? I know that's not a lot of time to prepare for a debate. This first debate is going to be a lot of learning. So we're not going to be focused here on being perfect, on having everything 100% done. right? I really want you guys to, we're going to go through the process and kind of get an idea of how this works so that when we have another debate, we're ready to go. So you guys are going to be looking through this PowerPoint tomorrow about the debate. But the most popular question, right, I made tally marks that people turned in was, do video games make people more violent in society? That was the most popular question from everyone. So that's the one we're going to do. Now, this is going to happen on November 7th at 2 p.m. in person or virtually, right? Please make an effort to come in person if you can, just because it's going to be a lot easier to do in person. If you attend virtually, right, I'm probably going to end up having you pair up with someone who's in person so that we can do the debate that way. So speaking of that, you're going to have a partner, right? You're not going to have to do this by yourself. So keep that in mind. You're going to have somebody else that you can say, oh, hey, should we do this or should we say that, right? You can even, you're going to have time as well to sort of edit and work on your speeches. So preparing, right? I'm not going to tell you which side you're arguing. You're going to prepare and assume that you could be arguing either side, right? And this is where it gets hard because you definitely have an opinion on this topic, right? You probably either think that yes, video games do cause violence or no, that they don't. It doesn't matter what you think, right? Debating is not about proving yourself right. It's about being able to argue anything. So you're not going to know until the day of. I'm going to say, oh, Raiden, you're going to argue for video games causing violence, and Elizabeth, you're going to argue against, right? You're not going to know. So what that means is you need to be prepared to argue both sides. Arguing isn't constructive. Yes, it is. Because honestly, Paige, really, it's not about arguing against someone else. It's about you improving your ability to use evidence to support your argument, right? So the whole process, you don't want to be thinking like, oh, I'm versing this person. You kind of are, right? Because at the end, there is like a decision about whose argument was stronger. But that's the thing. It's whose argument was stronger. I have debated against things that I really believed and won, right? Which is crazy because you think, oh, well, this, you know, the evil side won or whatever. Well, it's not really. It's about who was able to take the evidence and the research that you did and actually express it more strongly than another person. So I highlighted the parts of the debate in different colors so that you can kind of see based on which side you're on. Really, the main things that you need to prepare in advance is you want to have your research, right? You want to print it out or have it in a folder or have it saved to your bookmarks or have it in some way accessible on your computer or on paper, right? Because then you're not going to have time to be researching during the debate. So you're going to definitely want to prepare, where it says prepared speech, right? For 5 minutes, first, the affirmative person is going to go. Now, 5 minutes, you might be thinking, oh, that sounds really, really long. Well, you have two people, right? You're both welcome to speak during this time. Really, in a formal debate, you would have one person speak and then another person would do a different thing. I'm not so concerned with us like following the rules. So you can think, okay, maybe my speech is only 3 minutes, but hopefully my partner will have some stuff and we can beef it up. If you finish before 5 minutes, that's fine. I'm not going to force you to keep talking, right? But make sure that you use the time. You want to present your argument. This is what, you know, this is why video games cause violence, and here's a million pieces of evidence that support that. Then the cross-examination, you can't prepare for that in advance, right? That's going to be based on what they say. But guess what? You kind of know what they're going to say because you're going to be doing the research. So in your mind, you should be thinking, if you're arguing the other side, you already wrote a speech. You know what they're going to say, right? So you're going to be able to argue against them because you're like, oh yeah, that's what they're going to say. Okay. Raiden, you did. So you're going to just want to elaborate on what you've already written. So then the negative side, or the side that's not agreeing with the statement, is going to do their prepared speech, right? Again, that should be something that's already prepared, just saying video games don't cause violence, here's why. A million reasons. I say a million because you want to have a lot of reasons. Think about it. If somebody gives you one piece of evidence, you're like, okay. If somebody gives you 40 pieces of evidence, you're like, okay, I guess they're right. You know, or I'll agree with whatever they're saying. Then the rebuttal and the cross-examination stuff, again, that's going to be kind of prepared live. And that's where you actually get to address what the person said. So you say, well, Raiden said that video games don't cause violence because of blah, blah, blah. Well, he forgot to mention this study that shows that they do cause violence because blah, 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 blah. So you actually will address what they said and say why it's wrong. That's the funnest part. Right? And then we do another cross-examination where you again get to kind of argue back and say, well, no, you're a little wrong. You kind of forgot to mention that that study was only on 2 people. Something like that. Right? It's hard for me to make this debate up in my mind, but you guys get the concept, I hope. Right? So then we have the summary, which is where you literally say, it's only a minute. Right? Where you're going to say, I'm right, and here's why. And you got to do your best points and get them out there, because that's the last thing that you're going to get to do. Right? And then the judge, which is going to be me, or maybe I'll get a special judge, we'll see, is going to decide, well, which side presented the stronger argument. Right? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that that side is correct or morally true or even right. It just means that person actually argued more strongly with the evidence that they had. Okay, so really all you need to do is prepare 2 speeches, one that's saying video games do cause violence and one that's saying video games don't cause violence, and have all your evidence. And then you want to have as much research as you could possibly find, right? Your research could be videos, it could be scientific studies, it could be articles, right? It could be firsthand accounts. I know Raiden, whoever gets Raiden as a partner is lucky, because Raiden already started doing this. And he has real data from his own personal world, right? With his siblings and people that he knows. So you can use any kind of evidence. You can appeal to people's emotions, right? You can use straight up facts the whole time. It's going to be up to you. So yes, Amanda, we will do this debate multiple times. So everyone will have a partner. So we'll have 4 people go at once. Right now we have 10 people logged in. So we'll probably have a group of 3 versus a group of 3, and then a group of 2 versus a group of 2. So we'll do the debate twice, and you'll actually get to watch. Now, or I might actually make you leave the room if it's the first one, because I don't want you to steal their ideas. But in the future, we'll have multiple topics, and we'll have people assigned to a specific topic. That way we can watch each other's debates. But again, this one's going to be kind of a learning experience. It's going to be a process. So really what you need to do is make sure you have those speeches, those opening speeches ready where you present your argument, and then you have as much research as you could possibly find. Okay, and then when you come in for the debate or log in virtually, you'll get your partner and you'll get time to talk to them, right? You'll get time to say, here's what I wrote. Oh, what did you write? Most likely you'll have similar things written, right? Because there's only so much information out there. And again, pay attention to the sources, because you can always get people by saying that their source sucks. If they're using a source called, you know, myfeelings.blogspot.com, then you can say, oh, well, this is just some like angry mom writing a blog. Like, why is that a valid source? Right? So pay attention to those sources, even the bad ones, because people might try to use them. Okay, so hopefully that kind of clears up stuff with the debate. If you have questions, feel free to email me or text me. And there is an optional assignment to turn in your speech, either for both sides or one side, if you'd like me to give you feedback, right? You don't have to. You don't have to have it ready until next Wednesday. But if you'd like for me to look at it, you can turn it in. Otherwise, just say, I don't need feedback and move on. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited. It's going to be fun to see you guys debate. Okay, so that's pretty much it, guys. We're going to end this session unless you guys have any questions. So I'll wait a couple seconds here to see if anyone types a question in the chat. Otherwise, you're free to go. And I will talk to you guys next week during the debate. And thank you, Elizabeth, for presenting. What's my favorite letter in the alphabet? Wait, from 1 to Z or A to Z? My favorite letter is J, obviously, because it's my name. All right, but Raiden, Amanda and I are going to have a meeting now because she's going to do something for Earth Science. And Logan, do you have any questions? Because otherwise, you're free to go. Thank you for being a great participant today. Okay. All right, Amanda, just me and you left. All right, so